Oh, this kid is good.
What an impact this rookie driver has had in just 3 races in his championship racing career. First of all, dramatic big-time speed on the big ovals at Motegi, Japan, and at Miami. There was the altercation with Michael Andretti in Japan that resulted in Montoya being placed on probation. So what does he do? He comes back and wins on the streets of Long Beach in his last outing. Now he's on the pole here at Nazareth, but he's his first challenge on a mile oval where things happen oh so quickly.
Racing is always fast and furious here, but not so fast this year. And that's because CART wanted to slow the cars in the corners for safety. They did so by going to smaller wings and taking half the downforce away. Well, drivers will tell you, downforce is your friend. And when you lose half of it, it makes the cars a big handful on the racetrack itself. Now, if it's going to be difficult to pass on the racetrack with less downforce, that may place a greater focus here on pit road for picking up positions.
3 races, 3 faces. Others still hunt victory. Every race this year has had a different winner. Super speedway to city streets, and now a short oval in Pennsylvania. Driver versatility is the game. The place is Nazareth. The men of CART are ready for a fight.
Well, Paul Tracy and the rest say that the new wings are a problem. The track is tight and tough, and they may not be able to pass. Parker, you buying it?
I'm not buying it, Paul. These conditions will favor the brave, those with great car control. I think we're going to see some fantastic racing, guys sticking their noses in places they haven't even imagined until that green flag drops.
It's the CART FedEx Championship Series, the Nazareth 225.
ESPN Speed World presents live from Nazareth, Pennsylvania, coverage of the CART Nazareth 225. They're already rolling on the track. Let's give you the starting grid. On the front row, Juan Montoya and Elio Castroneves, the first time that either driver has started from the front row in a CART race. Montoya, the most recent winner from Long Beach. The second row, Dario Franchitti and his teammate Paul Tracy. Tracy, a 2-time winner here at Nazareth. In row number 3, Mark Blundell and Patrick Carpentier. In the 4th row, Max Pappas and P.J. Jones. Back in row number 5, Adrian Fernandez and Greg Moore, winners of the first 2 races this year. The 6th row, Jimmy Vasser and Christian Fittipaldi. The 7th row, Jill DeFerrin and Michael Andretti. In row number 8, Mauricio Gugelmin and Brian Herta. The 9th row is made up of Cristiano D'Amata and Alex Barron. In row 10, Richie Hearn and Tony Kanaan. The 11th row, Scott Pruitt and Michel Jourdain Jr. And in the 12th row, Al Unser Jr. making a return from injuries. And, of course, on the outside of the row is Robbie Gordon. The race analysis, pit window at 78 laps. The distance of the track now measured at .946 miles.
Today, Paul will be riding on board with Robbie Gordon. He had a big testing crash at Milwaukee last week. He's still sore. Watch for him on the opening laps. Here's the view from Scott Pruitt's onboard camera. Also, we'll be seeing Richie Hearn from this angle as well as from above his head. Michael Andretti, the hometown favorite. Look for him to move up, Paul. And Jimmy Vasser's last year's winner. He, too, is looking for a long series of greens so the balance of his car can take full advantage of these difficult conditions.
As we look at the front row, Montoya, Castroneves, interesting facts about that front row. First time they've ever been there in the front row, and
in Champ Car racing, but Paul, in 1990, these two started on the front grid back in Italy during the World Championship Karting Federation. They went into the first corner. There was a huge accident. I don't think that'll happen today, but it will be interesting nonetheless.
We should see the green flag come out. They gave them 5 warm-up laps. Speed picks up. Montoya has the field. Green flag, here we go. Everyone was cautioned to be careful on this start. It's a little bit chilly here. They're also concerned about the lack of downforce. Through the first and second turns clean. Montoya leads. Castroneves off of the corner. Here's the rest of the field as P.J. Jones tries to prove right away that you can, in fact, pass without too much trouble. Max Pappas also making a move. safely and smoothly to the completion of lap number 1. 224 lie ahead. Here is P.J. Jones.
Paul, it's really windy today. It's taken a lot of the heat off the top of the track. They don't have much downforce. Dario Franchitti probably summed it up best. He said it's like driving in the rain at 185 miles an hour surrounded by concrete. The drivers aren't sure exactly what they're feeling underneath them. They can't tell if it's just an early warning sign or if it's a big red light saying, hey, we're about ready to go into the wall. So the guys are being very careful here, trying to feel out the cars, each other, and they've never run in this kind of turbulence until the drop of the green flag today.
Patrick Carpentier with P.J. Jones working on him. Up at the front, Montoya, Castroneves, Tracy, Franchitti, Blundell. Those are the top 5. And then this battle.
Paul, the other thing they've done since last year at Nazareth, we can see the inside, those red and white curbs. They're much steeper. They're built for bigger, heavier cars. A lot of the drivers will have to try to work around those curbs because as they go by side, they'll run out of room. These cars run right on the ground, and if they get into those curbs too much, it really upsets the car. We've seen some big moments in practice up to this point.
Montoya out in front by a little over 1 second, but his problem is going to be that very shortly he will overtake the back of the field. And then that whole passing issue comes up again. And what about his teammate, Jimmy Vasser? You on board with Jimmy? Just behind him, that is Christian Fittipaldi. And Jimmy's trying to close on Greg Moore just ahead of him.
Paul, it's going to take a number of laps before we really see the true handling characteristics of these cars come forward. I think everyone's being very cautious right now, feeling each other out. And as the laps start to unwind past 30, 40, 50 laps, some of these cars might pick up a big push, others might go quite loose. And then we'll start seeing drivers moving either rapidly backwards or towards the front.
Jimmy Vasser with Christian Fittipaldi still on top of him, but back at the front of the field. Here's Montoya, and already he is on top of the traffic.
We'll see how brave Juan Montoya is, because if he doesn't start pushing hard here, Paul, to really force his way through, the rest of the field is going to catch up to him very quickly.
He comes under Robbie Gordon, and he's clear. I think Gordon helped him there. Here comes Castroneves.
You'll see a big variance in lap time as they go through these lapped cars. Their laps will go from 22, 23 seconds a lap. They'll be 3, 4, 5 seconds a lap slower. And that gives a big advantage to the guys behind him until they hit the same log jam.
It's going to get a little harder now. That's Al Unser Jr. just ahead.
And no one at the back of the field wants to go a lap down so early, especially Al Unser Jr., so you can be sure that Al's going to fight if he can to try to stay on that lead lap.
Montoya is there. Unser Jr. has got his own problems with several cars just ahead of him. The rest of the field now closes up behind Montoya and Castroneves.
Paul, all through the weekend, we've seen Castroneves so quick through all the sessions. Only the pole eluded him at the last moment, and only by 1,000th of a second. He has got tremendous confidence in this Lola chassis, in his team, and in his own abilities. And what we'll see is not the ability just to go quick for one lap, but who can keep that confidence and that momentum to get through this traffic.
Iron Trimble on the front stretch.
It's Paul Tracy.
Tracy had been trying to find his way around some of the slower traffic, got it sideways coming off of the last corner here. Some say there are 3. Cardit themselves say that there are 4 corners here, so we'll call it 4. Paul Tracy didn't touch anything on the warm-up lane and able to continue on.
It's the same place that we've seen the incidents so far this weekend. I was speaking to Dario Franchitti, and he said if you drive in too hard and understeers, in this case, as we see from Paul, as he came off the corner on the throttle, the back end got away from him. Now, the difference is, Paul, Mr. Tracy was able to keep it off the concrete wall. He's the only driver that's been able to do that all weekend long.
And you've been saying the key to that is to get back in the throttle and drive it off the corner. So we're under our first caution of the day. We'll be right back. And the look down on the Nazareth Speedway from the Honda Helican. We are still under the yellow. Result of Paul Tracy losing control of it while he was in 3rd, dropped back into 10th place. There is Paul Tracy still on the track. A couple of guys came into the pits, Tony Kanaan and Al Unser Jr. to refuel.
Here we can see Paul the exit of turn 3, and as he comes off the corner here, as we watch, there you can see he's kept it down to the inside. Fortunately, he was able to to keep the car off the wall on the outside and not enter the grass at such a steep angle that he slammed off the barrier on the inside. So fortunately, only lost a few positions. He stays on the lead lap. Very, very fortunate situation for Paul Tracy.
Juan Montoya picks the speed back up as we come back to the green flag. We're racing once again at Nazareth. Montoya, Castroneves, Franchitti across the line, and Robbie Gordon, who is already a lap down. It's Blundell that rides in fourth, followed by Carpentier. Still staying at the front. First two separate a little bit there, and it's a long way back to Franchitti.
Paul, that's going to change very quickly because as we saw with only a few laps after the green, they bunched up catching the tail end markers, and that's going to happen once again. But it looks on a one-lap basis in clear traffic that Montoya and Castroneves are just better than anybody else on this racetrack. They're getting away cleanly from the rest of the cars.
Jan Beekes, Paul Tracy sits down in 10th now.
Yes, Paul, and he did not come on to pit road, even though Barry Green, his team owner, said, come on to pit road, we want to give you new tires. Paul Tracy disagreed. Hey, there's nothing wrong with the tires. I did not flat spot them. I'm staying out.
Well, Paul, if you can come off a corner that fast at that speed, not flat spot the tires, that means only one of a few things. You don't have very much downforce, and there isn't very much heat in the tires because under normal circumstances, you could have worn right through the carcass of the tire, spinning at 135 miles an hour. So that shows you these guys are hanging on. They're not on a tightrope. They're on a razor's edge today.
Whereas Paul Tracy came out of third, but nonetheless, you're watching P.J. Jones. He started 8th and is now running 5th as he was able to finally get around Carpentier and Fernandez.
We saw that this morning in the morning warm-up as P.J. was very, very determined to run in traffic to try to get into places that other people weren't looking at, and that's paying off during the race here, Paul.
Once again, traffic is going to be the challenge. Tony Kanaan comes off onto the pit road. That's the second time he's been out. He's reacting to a black flag for passing the pace car, so they'll bring him in, penalize Kanaan. And Brian Herta now also a pit situation, Gary.
Brian Herta came in earlier under the yellow pole. We wanted to check because Brian had an accident last night on his motor scooter and he hurt his right foot, specifically his big toe. We wanted to make sure it didn't relate to that. They tell us that's not the case. The car was bottoming, so they've made some adjustments on the push rods, trying to get a little more running room between the bottom of the car and the asphalt.
And Paul, you're having a bad day if you come in early to make suspension adjustments during the course of a race. Now, we had a couple of pit stops from guys at the back just to top up the fuel like Al Unser Jr. did. They're already running at the back. They're not going to lose anything. It might give them a different pit strategy as the race unfolds.
As we're looking out the back end there, you can see the difference of the lines between the front two contenders. Jan Beekes?
And Parker, when you're saying it's a tough day when you make suspension changes, one of the reasons is with these small wings, the drivers are saying if you just come in and make a wing adjustment, it's not enough. They say if you crank on those front wings like we see so frequently, it doesn't change the car enough to their liking.
Paul, 70% of the total downforce of the car now is being made by the underside of the car. So what Jan was talking about is that the wings that we traditionally see on these courses, the large road course wings that have such a great effect, are gone. With these smaller wings, these cars have about the same downforce as an Indy Lights car or an Atlanta car, but they've got twice the horsepower at 900 plus horsepower. It's very, very difficult to balance the cars, let alone drive them in traffic.
Well, once again, look at the comparative line between Montoya and Helio Castroneves. He's really getting the car wide off the corner much sooner.
Well, what he's doing, Paul, is that Castroneves has got to try to find some clean air. The drivers have said it's about a 4 or 5 car length break until you can start finding clean air. So Castroneves is going high, he's looking low, trying to find a place that he can get wing air over the front wings of that Lola so that he can stay with Montoya.
So they're both trying to overhaul Scott Pruitt. First and second right together. Gary Gerald, Tony Kanaan's been in.
He's been in a long time, Paul. Now the engine comes to life. They were checking the pop-off valve right behind the driver's head and the roll bar. They had loosened it. I don't know if they replaced it. In fact, I don't believe that they could in that situation, but they've sent him back out now, but he was in here a long time.
You see Kanaan rolling up on the access road as he comes underneath the leaders. And still Scott Pruitt is the focus of Juan Montoya. Castroneves, that very interesting line. Of course, it's necessary for him to work out there.
And Paul, I'm not so sure if he's actually driving the car there or that's just where the car is sliding to. We've watched him earlier in the week sliding this car through turns 1, 2, and 3. And I think Helio's just got so much confidence he doesn't care if it slides that far as long as he can keep control of it and do it consistently. but I think that's just where the car's ending up as he's trying to stay with Juan Montoya.
You saw Franchitti come through there in third. We're now back with Mark Blundell and P.J. Jones. This is the battle for fourth place. That's Blundell.
And Paul, we can see there on the front of Blundell's car, there are two extensions on the nose. The team calls it the platypus. Some of the mechanics say, hey, it just gets in the way. That's what we call it. What they're trying to do is get some more downforce on the front of the car through those planes so that they can turn the wings down to get better airflow to the bottom of the car and into the radiators.
Back to the front of the field again. They still haven't been able to get around Scott Pruitt, but at the same time, that hasn't provided the opportunity for Franchitti to really close in as much as one might expect. Now they're around, and there's Ellinger Jr. as the guy who's sitting just ahead of them. So traffic, they said, would be a problem. It certainly is a problem. But Castro Neves is glued right to the back end of Montoya. With Parker Johnstone, we're back at Nazareth. 37 laps are complete. Castro Neves continues to be all over the back end of Juan Montoya as they try to overhaul both Ryan Herta and Ellinger Jr.
And Paul, if he can run that close, once he gets by, if and when he does, he'll take off like a rocket. If you can run that close to someone under these sorts of circumstances, you got to be faster.
And he takes the lead. Castro Neves, Montoya gave him plenty of room out there. That was good. Castro Neves took advantage of it. They both got around Brian Herta. While they did that, Ellinger Jr. was also able to come a little bit forward. But keep an eye now on Hilo Castro Neves because he seems to be substantially faster than Montoya. We're going to take a look at the Circuit City telemetry now.
Paul, he's going to have a fight trying to get around Ellinger Jr. Al wants to stay on the lead lap, but I tell you, once he gets by, he's going to put some distance on Montoya.
Paul Tracy has dropped a little bit further back after his situation. You have to now wonder if maybe it was not well advised to not come in for tires. Tracy's dropped down to 14th place now.
Yes, Paul, and I don't think that it's necessarily flat spots on the tires. I just spoke with Barry Green. He says our car has just gotten really loose. So I don't think it was because of the spin, and they're hoping for yellow so they can come in and change the car.
There's no day longer, Paul, than when you're on an oval and it goes loose. During the weekend, people have said to me, don't you miss driving? I said, boy, not here, not today.
Oh, look at this as PJ still working on Mark Blundell.
And Paul, we're now getting at the point where the car balance will start coming to the forefront. The guys with good cars will continue to march forward. Those that are having problems like Paul Tracy will start falling back rapidly. There's just nothing you can do. You adjust the sway bars, you move the weight jacker to bias everything to the front of the car to help support the back so that it doesn't try to swap ends on you. And once you've done that, then you just have to wait it out for your pit stop. But if it gets too bad, you've got to come in early. Otherwise, you'll put the car in the fence.
Dario Franchitti right now in third place. Sits in about a 4-second hammock between second place Montoya and fourth place Blundell. There's Blundell as he closes on Pruitt. Pruitt is 22nd, a lap behind the race.
Well, see, right here, Paul, you can see those extensions on the front of Mark Blundell's car. Once again, they're trying to stick the back of the car with as much downforce as the car has, but you want to keep the front wings as low as possible to try to keep the air moving through the underside of the car and through the radiators as efficiently as possible. And that's what those bills are for on the front of Mark's car.
Mauricio Gugelmin has fallen from 15th to 18th as Damana, Barron, and Jourdain all were able to work past him.
Blundell has been surprisingly quick, Paul, right from opening practice here at Nazareth, starting to show some of the form that they had.
Oh, it looks like little Al, and it's against the wall. His first real race of the year, where he actually is able to get up to speed and get going. He's into the wall again. Remember, it's his right ankle that is a problem.
And that's not the side you'd want to hit on, Paul. Doggone it.
So the caution comes out for the second time. Ellinger Jr. catches the wall. The field throws quite a bit of debris back there, too.
We have reports there was smoke from the right front tire on the way in, Paul. We don't know if Al just tried to lock it up coming off the corner or if there was a problem with the front of the car prior.
So with 46 laps complete, anticipation is that as soon as they open the pits that the leaders will all be in. Castro Neves, Montoya, Franchitti, Blundell, Jones, Pappas, Carpentier, Fernandez, Vassar, and more. Those are the top 10 positions.
See Al up against the wall here, Paul. It just takes your heart out of your chest. How sad. You can see smoke there. It looked like Al was just a little bit high, Paul. And I can't tell if the car just wouldn't turn down into the corner. See if we can get a better look at it here. Look to the right side of your screen. We just see the final moments of impact there. He's up on the high side of the groove on the entry going into turn 3.
And the report from observers is that the driver is okay, up straddling the nose of the car. That's Dr. Terry Trammell, the orthopedic surgeon that takes care of most of these drivers. His wife, Rhonda, by the way, is going by every lap because she's driving a pace car. A racing background of her own of considerable expertise.
Multiple kart champions.
There's a good view. Let's make sure he can actually, he is definitely favoring the bad ankle, but he was doing that when he was climbing out of the car every time.
This is the last thing the Team Penske needed at this point in the season, Paul. They've had so many struggles so far in just 4 races.
Well, the last thing Junior needs. So now as the field begins to come in for pit stops, we begin with Jan.
And Helio Castroneves will be the first to stop because he is near pit in. Now, Paul, the fuel tank is not empty, so this should be really fast. They should have the fuel done before the tires. The fuel's done. Now we're waiting for tires. 9.7. Gary?
And at the other end of the pit, service for Montoya. Oh, he's out of here quickly. He may have regained the lead. Yes, he's out ahead of Castroneves.
Oh, you bet he did. Montoya was able to light that throttle in the last pit position, and that got him ahead of Castroneves. So the pit stops, as we suggested at starting, are definitely going to be a factor here today and help them gain position. We'll be back. Focuses on one of the best, Al Unser Jr., who has had just a dismal year. This was why at Miami, lap number 1 when he got into the wall with Naoki Hattori, and then Thursday, finally, despite a break to the right ankle, both bones, he's back at the track in the car, and then just a few moments ago into the wall. Al Unser Jr. first reports are he's okay, certainly shaken, and that right ankle can't be all that comfortable. Jan Vikas.
And Paul, I had the opportunity to speak with Roger Penske, and he said he did talk with Al on the radio, and Al said, unfortunately, I just got into turn number 3 too hot. I was trying hard to stay on the lead lap, overcooked it, and went into the wall. Gary?
Quick update on the pit stop for Juan Montoya. After he got back out on the track, Chip Ganassi came on the radio and told his rookie driver, you all owe all your guys dinner. And Juan's response was, I'll buy him dinner, I'll buy him breakfast, and I'll think of something else. That was a sensational stop to give him the lead back from Castroneves.
You know, and I think right there, as we look at the current standings, you understand why so many of us at the track like Juan Montoya in just a short period of time. He is so personable. In many ways, he's aggressive. He really goes at it, but then he's also very, very pleasant around all of his competitors. Now, while we're waiting for them to come back to the green flag, it will in fact be a little time here. Here at Nazareth, the flag flies at half-staff, and the reason for that is the incident at Charlotte last night that took the lives of 3 spectators and injured 15 others. Everyone here at the racing community, the fans, they all extend their sympathies and their concerns. That's tough, not just for Charlotte, but for all of racing. The 3/4 mile, 2-time NASCAR Truck Series champion Ron Hornaday is also the defending race champion. That coverage Saturday. For more, log on to ESPN.com, part of the Go Network, go.com.
Paul, we focus so often on the drivers, but the drivers can't get their job done without great teamwork. This last time we're looking at Patrick Carpentier. He came in 7th, went out 13th, and then had to pit again because of a pit violation. Other losers during that first round of pit stops to Farron. He came in 13th, went out 15th, and then he had to pit again. The winners, obviously, were Juan Montoya, came in 2nd. His guys put him back in the lead. Vassar came in 9th, went out 7th. Michael Andretti came in 12th, went out 10th, and Cristiano D'Amata, big winner, came in 15th and went out 11th.
And Gary Gerald, what about Jill DeFerrin?
Well, Jill had to make 2 pit stops. The first time he came in for service, they weren't able to get the fuel into the car, so he didn't want to lose the lap, got back out, came around. They've confirmed that they did get him a full load of fuel the second time by, but Jill is trying to do everything he can from the cockpit to improve the handling characteristics, because he's reported that number 5 Valvoline machine is extremely loose.
And Gary, some of the other other radio communication that we have heard is some of the drivers are concerned about the marbles, the rubber that comes off the tires on the outside of some of the turns. They've relayed that information to CART. CART is trying to check into it to see if they can get it a bit more clean.
Ready to go back to green. It'll be Montoya, Castroneves, Franchitti, the top three. As green comes out, we're racing once again. The Nazareth 225, 59 laps complete. We're on lap number 60 of 225. Total distance, 212 miles.
Montoya got a great jump on Castroneves coming off at turn 3, but as we've seen, Castroneves is very, very determined, very confident. He doesn't have the championship winning team behind him like Juan Montoya does, but that's not stopping him or affecting him in any way, shape, or manner.
Mad Max works on Mark Blundell. Fight for 5th. CART Winner Circle last night, one of the questions was, what is Blundell's nickname from years and years ago, and how did he get it? Any guesses? It's simple enough. It's Billy. But it has nothing to do with racing. It has to do, he said, with his old school days, and he didn't have a clue how he got the nickname.
Well, his new nickname's the Dark Knight, because none shall pass.
I think he's happier with Billy.
Max has been quick all weekend long, Paul. You can see he's growing more confident with his team.
Back to the front, watching Montoya. Castroneves 7/10 behind, followed by Franchitti, another considerable distance.
We've talked a lot about the equipment changes for this weekend and the struggles with the small wings, but the other thing that the drivers have been talking about are driving styles, of trying to adapt their style for this new configuration of lack of downforce. Franchitti and Tracy as teammates were probably the two best. Tracy with his experience here, Franchitti with his road racing abilities, but now we've seen Paul fall back. Franchitti's still trying to hang in there. The class of the field are these two young 23-year-olds, Juan Montoya and Castroneves.
Speeds at the line, pretty much what you would expect since we're not that far away from coming back from the caution. Jan Beekes, Al Unser Jr., how is he?
Well, he's out of the hospital, Paul, but he's on crutches, but obviously not from this incident, but from Homestead. What happened down there in turn 3?
Oh, I just got in a little bit too hot. My front end was going away really bad, and it was just like I didn't have any rear brakes. The fronts just locked on me, and then I got up in the grade, and it just went away.
Track conditions themselves, because you were pretty much able to stay on the lead lap there, running with the leaders.
Yeah, track conditions are good. I mean, we just, we weren't running with the leaders, but they could lap me pretty quick, but then I could hold them up pretty good. And so, it was, it's single file out there. You can't really do a lot of passing out there, but, it was basically good. I want to say hi to my Cody and little Al and Joe and Shannon.
Well, the good news is, thankfully, the injuries were not aggravated. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Paul?
Most of the top 10 static at the moment. The battle is really back in the back. Michael Andretti is working on Greg Moore.
Slowest part of the track, turn 3, Paul, about 135 miles an hour. You can see Michael shift from 5th to 6th there. They're going through that complex, turn 1, 10 miles an hour faster than they used to. Less drag, less downforce. The cars accelerate very hard. Now uphill through turn 2. 3.5 Gs. Now off a 3-story building down into turn number 3. Hard on the brakes. And back on the throttle again. Working on Greg Moore. Looking for some clean air. Trying to figure out how to set him up to try to get at least close enough to make a pass stick.
It's an oval, but he's shifting.
Very unusual, Paul. Now we saw it at Motegi earlier in the year, and that time he held his shift until the back straightaway. And now in traffic, we should see him go down again.
Both of them passed Brian Herta, who has been very courteous to any number of drivers that have been overtaking, beginning with the leaders not all that long ago.
Well, interestingly enough, when we were on board, we didn't see Michael downshift. They caught up to Brian. His Cosworth fell off the rev range, and we could see Greg squirt away. I'm sure Greg downshifted, and Michael lost some distance there. But now he's right back into that aerodynamic vague zone of turbulence. But look at Mike. He's able to hang in there, Paul. It's same sort of situation that we saw earlier, that if he's able to get around Greg, I'm sure that he's faster and he'll be able to pull away. But getting around is the big difficulty here.
As they close on 8th place Fernandez, from time to time, too, you get a glimpse behind Andretti of Cristiano D'Amata and Christian Fittipaldi, Andretti's teammate. Gary Gerald?
Frustrating day, Paul, for Tony Kanaan. We know you had boost problems, then it got worse. Tell us what happened, Tony.
I tell you, Gary, what a long day, what a long weekend. But yeah, we had a boost problem since the first lap after the start, and but we are trying to fix it, to try to learn a little bit. We went down like 15 laps or something like that, but I was still trying to make my car work for the next races, and suddenly my throttle got stuck in the restart. Then Steve decided to quit. I think it was a good move, but the bad luck is gone now. So we're like Long Beach, Nazareth. So we're going to Rio to have fun and have a good time.
You got to love this guy because he's always got a smile. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
And Paul, I don't think people understand how difficult this series is. Tony led the Long Beach Grand Prix. It was his first pole. Today, he was 20th on the starting grid. The diversity is so difficult here to adapt to these different sorts of circuits and conditions. It really takes the best of the best.
And on one hand, while they say it is hard to pass, it most certainly is. But when they do, it's absolutely spectacular. Montoya at the front, still followed by Castroneves and Franchitti. Currently 16th. He was just able to get around Mauricio Guzman, despite the fact that he's been struggling with that car. Brian Herta has been in and out of the pits not once, but twice in just the last few laps. There's DeFerrin at the front. It's still Montoya, Castroneves, Franchitti, and then P.J. Jones and Mark Blundell. P.J. just having a terrific day.
He really is, Paul. Started 8th, up to 4th. And what these guys are looking for right now are picks. They're looking for back markers so that they can use them to their advantage to block in the guy that they're racing with, to try to gain an advantage, to go high or low. It becomes a real chess game at 185 miles an hour to try to use that advantage to get around the guy you're racing with.
By comparison with some of the speeds that we see elsewhere, their speeds here on average 150 miles an hour for the leader, not all that fast. Here we're going to take a look at the Circuit City telemetry coming out of Helio Castroneves' car.
Paul, turn 1 used to be just a kink in the road. Now it's a full turn. The drivers have to lift and balance the car. In qualifying, they were through their flat, but now it's a very difficult corner. The fastest part of the circuit going into turn 2. Now they drop off that 3-story building into turn 3. Speeds approaching 185 miles an hour, hard on the brakes down to 135 miles an hour mid-corner, and standing on the throttle and back through start-finish.
Acceleration and brake in this case, really the product of accelerometers. And the miles per hour, of course, actual speed off wheel sensors.
And last year, Paul, through turn 2, the cars were approaching 5 Gs of lateral force. Now they're just over 3 Gs, so a significant reduction in cornering force. The drivers are really, really on knife's edge at all times. Plus, it's really windy here today. With that lack of downforce, it really moves the cars around a lot.
86 laps complete. 3 different chassis. First 4 positions. Reynard, Lola, Reynard, Swift. Top 4.
What makes it even more impressive is that P.J. Jones has got the same mechanical package as Michael Andretti, who's running back in 10th place. A great run for P.J. Jones, his best of the year today.
His teammate Adrian Fernandez, who's back in 8th, is in that car they call Frankenstein, the combination Renard package, said that when the Swift was proven that much faster, then he would shift to it. I wonder if that thinking may not come sooner than later with PJ's performance. Cristiano D'Amata, he's having a nice day, currently 11th.
Cristiano had a good round of pit stops. He was very quick earlier in the week.
Up here challenging Greg Moore. So Cristiano challenging one of the best there is on an oval. Look at Fittipaldi on the inside, too. Oh, we start talking about Cristiano, and that woke up Christian Fittipaldi.
It sure did. It looked like Cristiano just got bogged down a little bit coming off of turn 3. And Christian Fittipaldi used that to his advantage to get a run going down into the first corner. Oh, that was close. Robbie Gordon, Paul. Remember last year he came to the first practice session in a Toyota, put it in the top 10. It was the buzz through the paddock. We expected some great things now that he's reunited with his engineer of the past, Kenny Anderson, for this weekend. They've struggled the entire time. His onboard camera during qualifying was horrific to watch. Robbie was holding on for dear life trying to get the most out of that car. It's just not come together for him, whereas Cristiano D'Amata, the highest running Toyota at this point, now in 12th place, is having a very good run. A young man very intelligent, very skilled, just trying to get to the end of this thing.
Oh, man, look at this group. This is amazing. Robbie Gordon is a lap off of the pace, and look what he does. That's the mark of the best. Well, and even further, it's the mark of the guy going into the pits.
That's right, Paul. You know, but Robbie, even for his reputation, has always been fantastic to run with. You can run wheel to wheel at 200 miles an hour with absolute confidence, and he's great when he gets in those sorts of situations. Always the consummate professional.
So Michael Andretti and Christian Fittipaldi, both teammates, have both gotten around Greg Moore. Keep track of that, Gary.
Brian Herta has climbed out of his car. Brian, I know it's very disappointing. I guess you wanted to stay out there, but it wasn't working today.
Well, yeah, we tried. We couldn't seem to figure out what exactly happened. I mean, right from the start, the car was bottoming on the ground really hard, and it was really loose. The back end was sliding all over the place. And the weight jacker, the thing we use at the front of the car to move weight back and forth, was broken. So I think that may be the problem. We tried to fix it on a couple of pit stops, making some big adjustments. We couldn't make it drivable, and you know, it kills me because these guys work so hard to you know, have to take a race car off the track. But you know, I was going to get in somebody's way out there and collect somebody who was having a good day, and that wasn't going to be fair to anybody.
Thank you, Brian. Jan?
Another guy who's having a tough day, Gary, of course, is Robbie Gordon. We saw him come on to pit road. I just spoke with John Menard, co-owner of the team. I said, what'd you guys change? He says, nothing. We're just slow. Paul?
Now the other co-owner, Mike Held, is actually spotting for Robbie, and from the spotter's position up on top of the grandstand. 95 complete, anticipating the next pit stop to come at about 130, and Montoya is still the leader. Baseball presented by Gum Out. This week's the Cleveland Indians versus the Texas Rangers from the ballpark at Arlington. For more, log on to ESPN.com, part of the Go Network, go.com. Montoya is still the leader. Castro Neves is still second, but there's a change, and it's P.J. Jones moving around Franchitti.
A great move, Paul. He got a great run coming off of turn 3. This is the finest champ car drive of his life, and it's great to see in that Vestian Pat Patrick car.
You know, his dad, former Indy 500 winner Pernelli Jones, got to be more than a little happy with all of that. You look down from the Honda Helicam. And let's go down into that Patrick pit. What do you say, Gary?
Jim McGee on the radio with P.J. Jones. Here's a man who's seen great race drivers all his life. This is a terrific run, but it's your first time on an oval with a Swift. Have you found something here that's brought this great run?
Well, the guys have done a great job, you know, working on the car this weekend. Steve Newey and Jim Hamilton, our engineers, and PJ's doing an excellent job driving this thing. So we're making some gains, and we're really happy for PJ. He's doing a great job.
He seems like he's getting his best performances of his champ car career every time out now with the Patrick team.
Yeah, we're gaining. We really are. We're real happy.
A long way to go, but they're smiling down here, and you got to love it for Pat Patrick, Jim McGee, and everybody with this team.
Jim McGee, along with Clint Bronner and Mario, really the ones credited with inventing stagger that's so important today. Renard, Lola Swift, front of the field. Battle between Castro Neves and Montoya once again. Traffic still the factor. PJ about 4.5 seconds back from the leader.
It's amazing, Paul. All three of the top cars are on Firestones, but as you said, it's a Renard chassis, a Lola chassis, a Swift chassis. It's a Honda, a Mercedes, and a Cosworth power car. I mean, that shows you how diverse but how competitive this series is.
Now, tires was one of the questions coming into this race. Jan, how are they faring?
Well, they're faring well, Paul, but much of the radio communication right now to the drivers is we want you to be conservative with the tires. So you'll see guys make aggressive runs, and then they'll sort of settle back into a pace because they're concerned about the tire wear, in particular of the Firestones. Not that they're going to wear out, but that the performance might go down if you run them too hard, too long.
Juan Montoya on his first short oval. How's he faring? Oh, just awesome. Here's Michael Andretti. He's been chasing down and working on Adrian Fernandez, the other of the Patrick cars.
And Paul, the first two races of the year, I questioned Adrian Fernandez in this 99, 98, 97 car. The 99 Renards have about 200 pounds more downforce. Didn't affect him at Homestead. Certainly he won Motegi, so it worked there. But here, with such limited downforce, I think those 200 pounds less downforce in this Frankenstein conglomeration of car is hurting Adrian Fernandez. Still, though, running strong in 8th place in front of Michael Andretti.
And the fight for 8th, that's Christian Fittipaldi, the yellow helmet right behind Michael Andretti. The two Newman Haas cars, very similar in livery in the terms of the black cars. Helmets where you really look for the difference. A traditional and legendary Michael Andretti style helmet, same as his dad wore. And remember, they grew up at 53 Victory Circle, about 2 miles from this racetrack.
Michael's a hometown favorite. He certainly has a lot of emotional pull in this area. But Christian Fittipaldi, Paul, has been quick all weekend long. This is the first time that he's trailed Michael at any point during the course of the race weekend. You see Michael downshifting to 5th gear, slowest part of the track. Big bump there right at the apex. We'll see him upshift. Big lift for turn 1. This used to be flat. Downshifting again for turn 2. That shows you how the speeds have dropped since qualifying, where they used to run top gear through there. We'll hear the Cosworth pull up to over 15,000 RPM here. Look for the bump halfway around this corner, Paul, right here. See that big bump makes the cars very nervous coming through that corner. Track bumpier than last year and not helped by lack of downforce.
Take you forward now. Max Pappas beginning to work hard on Mark Blundell. And while we're keeping our watches on P.J. Jones, several laps ago, 4 in fact, we reported him as 4.5 seconds behind the lead. He's now nibbled it up to 4.1, so he's very steadily moving forward on the first 2 positions, Montoya and Castroneves.
You have to wonder, Paul, P.J. Jones is one of the few drivers besides Jimmy Vasser and Al Unser Jr. that come from American short track racing. He's used to sliding midgets in the dirt. I don't think it's that different driving these cars on this racetrack. PJ very good in traffic, very confident with what he's doing today, and he's cut another few tenths of a second off that lead. So PJ making steady progress back towards the front.
Yeah, down to 3.8 now. Blundell and Pappas, they've broken off for the moment. You ride with Richie Hearn. 115 laps complete. We should be at 14-15 laps away from the next round of pit stops, and those will be critical. The front now, Montoya with Castroneves right behind him. Gil DeFerrin running 16th, trying to keep him from going a lap down. But the past couple laps, they've been right there. In fact, Montoya just kicked it sideways just before we came back and caught the car at the same time. Because they're in this situation, look at the top of the screen. There is P.J. Jones, now 1.3 seconds back from first and second.
PJ is on the charge, Paul, but this is about the same point as we saw in the first one when Castroneves became very, very strong. Now, I don't know if it's Montoya coming backwards or Castroneves' car just getting better, but Castroneves is at the same point that if he can figure out how to use slower traffic or wait for Juan to make an uncharacteristic mistake so far, once he gets by, he should be able to pull away from him. But at the same time, P.J. Jones is closing the gap. Right now, he's the fastest guy on the racetrack.
But as this goes on, all of the crews are beginning to think about that next pit stop, refueling tires. The indication was, by the way, that the tires about 60 laps into any segment run tend to go away. So they may be going away right now, Jan.
Well, Paul, I think the tires are hanging in there pretty good. However, we expected to see pit stops around 1 lap 30, but I believe it's going to be later. I believe for Helio Castroneves, they're now talking 1:43 to 1:45, so they're able to stretch the fuel out. I don't think anyone's saving fuel, but the cars don't burn as much with these small wings.
Well, we finished 125, and of course, what we do is project just like everybody else what all the teams do with one another as well. Castroneves right there, still looking. P.J. Jones still has to handle up Carpentier. He's the separation. There's Franchitti and Blundell. So Blundell right on top of Franchitti for fourth.
And Team Green worked very hard this weekend, Paul, to find a good race balance, with one of their drivers doing long runs, the other one working on qualifying runs. And I've never seen Dario and Paul work quite so well together, and I think that's why they qualified so well. And here's Dario with a very, very good 1 mile oval performance. But as we see, the guys in the front are very, very strong, very, very confident in their chassis and their chances to win this race.
If you watch carefully, all of these drivers are fighting this track so much. I mean, they're skating, they're sliding, they're all over the place. Still putting down some pretty good laps, though, that the top speeds are still sitting right at 150 miles an hour. Mark Blundell, Circuit City Telemetry.
And Paul, if we can see the cars move from our vantage point, that's a big moment for the drivers, and they're moving all the time. These guys are really working these cars, and they're trying to figure out what's important to feel that the chassis is telling them and what to ignore. And I tell you, the whole time, even though they're strapped down with a 6-point harness, they're on the edge of their seats.
And to the lead lap is still Jill DeFerrin. Just ahead of him is Alex Barron, running in 15th place. So they have their own little fight going just ahead of the leaders.
What's unusual for an oval, Paul, is the difference between the top speed and the minimum speed. The first two races we had at Homestead and Motegi, those two speeds were very, very close together. Here, there's almost a 60-mile-an-hour separation between minimum and maximum speeds. It puts a real premium on drivability of the engines, brakes, balance, and as Dario Franchitti said, if you get into the corner a little too hot, like we saw Al Unser Jr., the car washes up into the fence. If you're more conservative on the entry and you get on the throttle hard trying to carry exit speed, the car will turn around on you just like it did with Paul Tracy.
We just crossed over the 131st lap. Here's last year's winner, Jimmy Vasser, currently 7th. Michel Jourdain Jr. has become the first to stop on this segment. He is in and out of the pits already, and as Jan Beekes indicated, some of the teams now thinking that they may go into the mid-140s before they stop.
And as we ride on board with Jimmy, as we open the program, we talked about how easy it looked during qualifying. Well, trust me, Paul, it's never easy. These guys are hanging it all out. But Jimmy knows from his experience and from his win here last year that you've got to really concentrate on a car that's very stable, especially at the back, for the long distance of the race. And that means from full fuel load to empty, where these cars lose a few hundred pounds, it changes the ride height of the car, changes the aerodynamic balance, and they can be very difficult to drive as they pass half tanks to empty tanks. Oh, so close there with Michel Jourdain Jr., but Jimmy gets through cleanly.
Michel having to tiptoe, of course, because he's just out of the pits. His tire not up to full temperature yet. At the front, they're still at each other, but nothing's changed. After 134 laps, still Montoya and averaging 150.7 green race average. The battle has been between Montoya and Castroneves, and Montoya with a great pit stop put him in the lead, and he's stuck there.
That teamwork made all the difference. That's the difference between first and second, is how that championship-winning Ganassi Target team was able to get their young driver back out in front of Castroneves.
Now here's something to be thinking about. If they get to the 145th lap and don't refuel until then, they're 89 to go right now. Are we looking at this stop upcoming being the last stop of the race? Very possible.
It is very possible, Paul, and that's where the chess game comes to the fuel strategies. That's where the data acquisition guys down in the pits are working feverishly to make sure they can get every ounce of fuel to the engines for the drivers to use as much power as possible to try to be as competitive as possible right to the checker. That's another aspect of teamwork. The drivers can't do this alone. And if anybody in the chain
just
sweep
came in, there he is. This is on the 138th lap. Guzman was a lap behind the lead, running 17th at the time.
A long stop there, Paul.
Anticipate Jimmy Vasser still in 7th, coming in at the end of this lap.
So it doesn't look like we're going to get to that fuel window that was anticipated. And at this point, Paul, I don't know if they can get to the end or not. Certainly not running full power.
Jimmy Vasser on the pit road now, And he will clear the pit so that Montoya can be in. Gary Gerald, you watching Vassar?
We watch Vassar, and you're exactly right. They'll get him in a couple of laps ahead of his rookie teammate Montoya. Jimmy glides in, perfectly positioned, perfect tempo and paces. He didn't have to get on the brakes off. Got wing changes up front. One full turn, it appears, holding him, waiting to get all the fuel. Joe and Jimmy wants to go, but they're waiting. Remember, it's a little slower out of that gravity tank. This is now he finally gets it rolling. 17.5 seconds virtually on that stop. We'll expect Montoya in a couple of laps.
You can see the rhythm of that change, Paul, there in the pits. The secret to doing fast pit stops is not to rush, and that's a championship caliber crew. They're doing a great pit stop. As Gary said, since they've already used a lot of fuel out of the tank, they're waiting because the gravity feed pressure is less because they've got less fuel in that tank. It takes longer to get it done.
Montoya just grabbed a chunk of the grass as he came through, finally frustrated, trying to move forward around Gilles de Ferran and hopefully put that distance and keep it there as he heads for his first pit stop, or his maybe last pit stop of the day. Just any time now. And look there. There's PJ, and de Ferran comes off. De Ferran is into the pits, but in doing that, that clears that whole bottleneck that was running, and that puts PJ right on top of Castroneves. Jan Beekes.
Well, the strategy for Helio Castroneves, Paul, is to stay out as long as possible so that it'll be their final stop on pit road when they come in here. The team confirms that they can get a few more laps. They can make it to the end. A lot of other guys could not go that far.
That's where the strategy comes in, Paul. Look at this traffic jam.
Oh! And Helio Castroneves, taking advantage of everything, is able to jump by. All right, look at Montoya. Montoya looks for a place, almost looks like he won't go for the road. PJ comes down along Montoya. They're side by side coming off the corner, traffic ahead. Montoya's all over the place looking for racing room. Finally, he grabs one. PJ loses it. Is he going to be able to keep it away from the wall?
They were banging wheels there, Paul. That was unbelievable. And he's got it running.
Oh, be careful about coming up. Yellow flags come out. Perfect time for the stops. PJ just loses it, doesn't touch a thing in a heated battle at the front. Three-way battle for the lead.
Remember, Paul, you can't pass here. You can't rub fenders in these cars. That was some wheel-banging action there. P.J. Jones, a great bit of car control. Once it started to go sideways on him, kept it running, kept his wits about him, got it back on the racetrack.
And also, don't forget that all those people who just pitted are now cooked because they would lose the lap when they came onto pit road. Everybody who's now able to pit under the caution, a huge advantage.
That's a nice way of putting it, I think. I think their day's over.
We're going to take a look at all of this that was going on. Boy, this was good.
Look at P.J. Jones shove him down. Look at the wiggle from Montoya there, Paul. Yeah, baby.
Boy, you know, you say, well, he lost it, but it was also a nifty little piece of driving.
What happened there, Paul, is as he came through, he tried to pinch off the exit. You can see Montoya there with Castroneves. Castroneves blocking down the inside. PJ now getting a good run on Montoya. It's the old pick, just like in basketball, except it's at 180 miles an hour. Montoya going low, he comes back up high. PJ looks at the high side, and as he comes through turn one, he just pinches off the exit a little bit.
All right, here comes the key stop then of the day. Let's start with Jan.
Helio Castroneves lost the lead last time here in the pits. Oh, and they had a little bit of trouble. The fueler had trouble getting the fuel nozzle in. This is going to take a little longer than expected. They might lose. Oh, they went too soon. There's a bunch of trouble down here, Gary.
No problems for the Ganassi team, waiting to get all the fuel. Revs are way up, and there he goes. Oh, good stop. 12.2 seconds, and he's done it again.
Castroneves rolls, then shortly thereafter Montoya rolls, but he's further down, and third of that group, P.J. Jones rolls away. All of this is still going to keep P.J. up at the front of the order, but Adrian Fernandez may also move into the top of the fight as well. We'll be right back. Looking down from the Honda Helicam as the pace car passing the field around, still under the caution now. I tell you, with all of that stuff going on, it really has affected the top of the order. After the stops, great stop by Montoya. His team gives him a stop almost 3 seconds faster than Castroneves. But Montoya, Castroneves, this is the battle that we saw heading into this thing.
And you can see here, Montoya goes a little wide. Castroneves ducks down low. They almost bang wheels there, Paul, coming off of that corner. And this gives P.J. Jones a run coming off that corner on Montoya. Now watch, he'll get in behind him to draft. Montoya tries to go low. Castroneves blocks him. P.J. stays high to maximize his speed, goes side by side with Montoya. And he's telling young one, hey, I'm for real, pal. As they come through here, Montoya's got some grunt coming off the corner. P.J. tries to keep it low coming through turn one. The back end snaps around. P.J. clutches it, keeps it running, and gets back into the fight, Paul.
And remember, several of the drivers say that racing on this place feels like you're driving on ice all the way around. Now, I mentioned that the way the stops came and the action came would be good for Fernandez, better for Paul Tracy and Cristiano D'Amata. Look at them there in the line. That's where they sit. Tracy is fourth, and Cristiano D'Amata is fifth. Everybody in contact at the front. We come back. Keep your eye on P.J. Jones. He's been stout.
And as they cross the line, they're about as side-by-side as you can be without being penalized, Paul. That fight with P.J. Castroneves and Paul Tracy.
Back racing again. Did you see P.J. and the move that he took? Now look at this fight. Is Castroneves in trouble? Tracy's coming in there to battle with him. D'Amata's right behind Tracy.
Castroneves so strong through both stages of the first two stops of this race, now has tremendous pressure from the man who's done more laps, has more experience around this track than anyone else, Paul Tracy, and last year's Indy Lights champion Cristiano D'Amata in that Toyota powered car.
Montoya's gone 2 seconds ahead of Jones. Jones trying to handle up Alex Barron. Castroneves looked like he struggled for a lap or two there. Paul Tracy's all over him. And that quiet Cristiano D'Amata, he's just sitting back there learning from Tracy.
P.J. Jones trying to battle with his last year's teammate in that Eagle chassis, Paul. It was the second quickest car in winter testing prior to this race, and P.J. Jones is having a problem trying to get around him.
Running through how they are paired up with different teams for you, just as a reminder, the upper left, as we watch that battle. Max Pappas comes into the pits.
Paul, we can clarify in the Max Pappas situation. The reason he comes in, when he came in on the earlier stop, we saw some commotion, didn't know why, when we were in the target pits awaiting Montoya. Pappas inadvertently hit one of his crew members coming in. That crew member has been taken to the safety center for evaluation. We don't know which member of the crew. We don't know any extent of the injuries, but there was an incident involving Max Pappas and one of his crew members. That's why he just got the penalty and was back on pit road.
So the in and the out for Max was for the penalty. Actually, the note in the official logbook will go down as running over the hose, one of the air hoses.
And Paul, what we're seeing is now that Castroneves has settled down, he's pulled away from Paul Tracy. P.J. Jones unable to make any progress on that Eagle chassis, but Castroneves, now having gathered himself together, is charging forward. Behind him, right at the top of the screen, we saw Paul Tracy is going backwards with Cristiano D'Amata all over the back of him. As they start to get more heat into these tires, Paul, you'll see that the true handling characteristic of the car will start to come out. Paul Tracy very strong in that opening after the green flag, simply because he's able to go so fast in difficult conditions, but now he's starting to fall backwards again. You can see Cristiano D'Amata now also falling back from Paul Tracy.
When from time to time you see Alex Barron, the 36 car, that's Dan Gurney's Eagle. That's the All-American effort. And slowly they're working their way into the fight. Each race seems to go just a little bit better for him. Dan Gurney refers to that as character building.
It's a beautiful car. Alex Barron, a very talented young man, currently in 10th position, which is a great effort for him.
Montoya, Jones, Castroneves, Tracy D'Amata, top 5.
As we watch Paul Tracy, Paul, he's talked about so much this weekend that everything he knows about the circuit he's had to throw out the window because the driving style has had to change to adapt to this low downforce configuration. He and Dario Franchitti have worked together extremely well and together have put both of their cars to the front.
Yeah, that was my kind of quiet whoa in the background there because Tracy got really high. Doing so, lost some momentum. D'Amata was able to move up on him. Jan Bikus?
Well, according to the team, that the Paul Tracy is still comfortable, but they're waiting for their opportunities to try and pick it up in traffic. So they also say that they've got to save the car and some fuel to make it to the end.
Well, that's interesting because, well, we knew that it was going to be close, but we're kind of making the assumption that for the top of the order, everything was going to be all right, maybe with a lap or two extra. But, well, even that's changing now. So right now, Montoya with a 2.2 seconds lead on the rest of the field. P.J. Jones, great run for the Swift, sits in second. And Helio Castroneves, who's been seconds ago. Helio Castroneves, a quick little spin, gets it under control onto the grass, but it looks like he's killed the motor.
Another disappointing day for Hogan Racing, Paul. They get so close. We can see him coming off of turn 3 here. And he just turns the car around. We've seen it so many times this week, and you can see the skid marks from the other drivers. He was a little bit later than everybody else. He did a 180 in, a 360 around, but unfortunately was unable to keep the motor running. We'll look at it from a different angle here, Paul.
Maintains pretty good control coming off the last corner.
It shows you how knife edge these cars are. It just turned around on throttle, 900 horsepower. Some heads-up driving there because he reverses the front wheels and instead of having it continue to spin to the inside, he brings the wheel back around to keep it close to the racetrack. That was some real heads-up driving on Castroneves' part, Paul.
One more view of it. There he goes.
Yahoo,
sideways. So Helio Castroneves, they'll get him restarted, and they already have. Jan Bikus, Carl Hogan, his owner, has been smiling all weekend. I hope he still is.
Well, not quite as much as before, Paul, but in the case of Helio, what did he say on the radio after that spin?
Well, he didn't say anything. He was trying to control the car, and the back end just broke loose on him, and he did a good job to keep it off the wall. We're disappointed, there's no doubt about it, but we'll see what happens.
Obviously, you're going to leave him out just to see if you can collect some points.
Oh, yeah. I think everything he did was flat spot some tires, so as soon as the pit's open, we'll bring him in and give him some new tires and see what happens.
Okay, should be exciting. Thanks.
Yeah, unfortunately, he's sat out there quite a bit of time. He's dropped 2 laps behind the race. Don't forget the wrap of this race and everything else. And Has Wheels goes fast and makes a lot of noise on RPM tonight. And for more information, log on to ESPN.com. Part of the Go Network, go.com. So now with the spin by this man, the number 9 car, Helio Castroneves, he drops back behind the race, though he was a critical part of the front 2 positions of the field for much of the run. Brings out the yellow for himself. There's Cristiano D'Amata. He is having one terrific day. Currently sits in 4th. Jan Bikus?
And the team is just ecstatic. Obviously, Cristiano doing exactly what they want him to do, but they're also pleased with the handling, and they say that they've been able to run the Toyota on full rich. They've been able to just throw the coals to it, so to speak, and they're just really excited about this young rookie. And remember, it's not over yet.
D'Amata was the quickest on the track before the yellow. Here comes Helio Castroneves. Down, get some new tires. Michael Andretti now in 6th place. His teammate Fittipaldi now in 7th. Dario Franchitti has been sliding slowly backwards with all of this action. Now sits in 8th.
And significantly, Paul, that moves Paul Tracy up into the top 3. If he finishes on the podium, this will be the first time he's been on the podium for almost 2 years since his win at Gateway in May of 1997.
Reviewing our onboards, there's Scott Pruitt's view back in 10th. Richie Hearn. He's 18th, 2 laps behind the lead. Robbie Gordon's been struggling as well. He's 21st, 4 laps behind. Jimmy Vasser, he won this race a year ago. Currently sits in 11th. He too is off the leader lap. And there's Michael, who still has a shot at this thing, sitting in 6th. Montoya, Jones, Tracy, the top 3. D'Amata, Fernandez, Andretti. See how they separate out. Montoya's going to have it okay as they come back to green. Got a little bit of separation. 2 back. Green comes out again. We race once again at Nazareth. 177 laps complete. Focus is going to be on that combination right there. Jones and Tracy battle for second. They're not going to be able to challenge the leader because they have slower cars ahead of them.
You can see PJ's car step out in the back coming off of turn 2, but that certainly hasn't phased him, Paul. They just have to figure out how to get around Alex Barron. They couldn't do it before the yellow. Can they do it after the yellow? Last night you told me this race wouldn't really start until around lap 170. You called it almost perfectly, Paul.
Oh, no. Castroneves into the wall. Yellow comes out.
And
maybe 2 inches on the new tires.
He has hit a ton, Paul. I had just said that we could see some cars stepping out, coming out of turn 2. The cars are very, very nervous during those pace laps. The tires cool off. There's a lot of pressure to try to get it done, because if you can't get it done now, it may be your last opportunity. He has made big impact with the outside wall.
So as the kart safety team comes to the action, moving around there, the big signal is when he actually takes the steering wheel off and pitches his out. That lets everybody know Carl Hogan has definitely gone from a smile to a very expensive day on what could have been one that made a great deal of money for him.
So disappointing. Carl Hogan, a huge racing fan, doing everything to stay in the sport. As we pick it up, Paul, we can only see him up against the outside wall already. Looks like it happened on the entry here going into turn 3 again, where everybody's been having problems.
So with the Castroneves accident, the yellow is out again. Montoya is still our leader under the yellow, followed by Jones and Tracy. We'll be back. Nazareth 225 under the yellow as a result of a single car accident. Elio Castroneves putting it up against the wall. Safety 2's up there. Dave Hollander and Dr. Terry Trammell working on that car, making sure that they protect and treat Elio Castroneves as best they can. We looked through the entire order. Some interesting changes up at the front of that field with D'Amata and Tracy, Fernandez, Andretti, and Fittipaldi all surging forward during the yellow previous to this one. Now the 50-yard indoor war is returned to ESPN as the 1998 Arena Football champion Orlando Predators take on the Iowa Barnstormers. For more, log on to ESPN.com, part of the Go Network, go.com. We'll be back in just a moment. Want to make sure that none of the fluids from Elio Castroneves' car get onto the track, so they have it all bundled up there. And he is back in the medical center. This is the situation. Can't tell much, but he sure rode that wall.
We know that he hit hard, Paul. We don't know what caused it, if it was mechanical or if he just got in too high or if there were some other mitigating circumstances, but the end result is that Lola took a lot of damage.
So Elio Castroneves, we wait for the official report, and we'll give that to you as soon as it's made available to us. In the meantime, another little bit of a, well, we'll start the update on Elio with Jan Vikas.
Spoke to Carl Hogan and asked if there was any conversations on the radio, and he said no. I asked him, do you have any idea what happened? He says, well, we think it might be cold tires, but when he left the pits, I told him cold tires, so he knew. They're not exactly sure. Gary?
Let's give you an update on the injured crewman on the Max Pappas crew. Jim Swanson is an inside rear tire changer. He was the one who was struck inadvertently when Max came in for the last round of pit stops, but fortunately we have a very favorable report from the med center. They understand that he is just fine. We're told by the crew that he's up walking around, so we're happy to report that after what could have been a very frightening moment, undoubtedly from Jim Swanson's standpoint, that he is reported to be okay.
Yeah, that is a good report. They are spending some considerable time trying to make sure that not only they clean up the oil dry from Elio Castroneves' accident, you may see the area from time to time from the onboard camera like this with Robbie Gordon, but they also want to put the sweeper out and see what they can do to get as much of the track as they can cleared up. We'll be back. Caution for the Elio Castroneves situation. Two-time NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series champion Ron Hornaday, the defending race champion, is taking a look Saturday from Memphis Motorsports Park at the NASCAR trucks. For more, log on to ESPN.com, part of the Go Network, go.com. And then don't forget the next stop on the Kart FedEx Championship Series, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, the Rio 200, and that coverage will come on ABC Sports. Parker in Rio. Can you imagine what that must be like? We'll be back.
I represent.
Trammell in the Toyota Solara pace car bringing the field down on the warm-up lane here at the track so that kart safety can do a better job on getting the course scrubbed off as much as they can before we go back to green flag, what everyone hopes will be the final segment. Paul Tracy currently in third. Jan Beekes, he's looking strong.
He is, and he runs very well, Paul, on his own. He's having some trouble in traffic, of course. All the drivers are, but he's concerned about how his car and how skittish it gets when he runs around other people. Now, there's nothing the crew can do here on pit road. They're just saying, okay, the rest is going to be up to you. Gary?
Interesting situation developed here yesterday, guys, involving P.J. Jones and Juan Montoya. They run first and second, as you're well aware. 2 cars in between them, lap cars. But yesterday, both accused each other in rather heated ways, we are told, of trying to cut the other off. They nearly had an incident on the racetrack on at least 2 occasions. PJ came down to Montoya pit to talk to the young rookie driver, and then things escalated a bit, and PJ said, "You've been warned." He turned and went on back. So apparently yesterday there was a lot of emotion between these 2 guys. We say that because if PJ can get around those lap cars in front of him, then of course he's right in direct contact with Montoya. And we've got enough distance to go that it could still be real interesting before it's all over.
And Gary, I've seen some of those crew members down here on pit in towards some of those lap cars trying to lobby to get those lap cars to move out of the way.
Now, so the real key will be Guzman and Alex Barron, and whether or not they will clear for P.J. Jones, or whether or not Chip Ganassi's team is more persuasive in their arguments right now. And there is Paul Tracy. He currently sits in third. Here's the field summary with the top 8 cars still on the lead lap. We've completed 193. 225 is the scheduled distance. Having remeasured this tri-oval, it's actually 9.946 around. And that means the distance is at 218.85 miles.
And how impressive as we look through this field, Paul. Montoya looking for his 2nd race win in a row. It was a bit of a surprise at Long Beach, but after all, he is a European road racer. But now, on an American 1-mile oval, he's shown all the experience and plum that you could possibly ask for in his debut here. P.J. Jones looking for his best finish. Paul Tracy looking for a podium to get his career kick-started once again. Cristiano D'Amata currently in 4th. It would be the highest Toyota finish ever. Previous, it was Max Pappas at Houston last year, finishing 5th. Adrian Fernandez in this Frankenstein car, doing everything necessary to remain in the points battle strongly, looking for a championship. And Michael Andretti and his teammate Christian Fittipaldi back in the hunt, very, very strong.
And last of the leader lap is Dario Franchitti, currently in 8th. And now for our next Toyota Spotlight, what we actually want to do is just take you back and focus a little bit on this race today and how it has run. Of course, Al Unser Jr. very early on, driving with a limp anyway because of his injury at Miami, got in the wall. He's reported okay. And then stuff like this throughout the run as Helio Castroneves grabbed the lead away from Montoya. Montoya came back to battle. P.J. Jones came around Montoya. Everybody was tied up in this fight. And then we ended up with a spin from P.J. Jones that just got him off the course. Didn't affect his positioning so much because he brought out his own yellow. And then Helio Castroneves, the reason for the yellow that we sit in right now as a result of this long slide along the wall. First reports were that he was conscious and okay. We saw that, but we're waiting for the official report from the CART Medical Center. And right now, as the chief steward of the series, Wally Dallenbach, promised everyone if he caught a long yellow going toward the end of the race, he was going to do everything he could to clean up the racetrack as best he could. So he's taking advantage of this time, not only to get oil dry off, but also get some of those marbles, those balls of rubber that come off of these tires, and try to get them as far away from the racing line as possible.
With a nearly 50% reduction in downforce, the tire companies responded by coming with a very soft tire. Well, Paul, that means they just come apart a little bit easier. They create more marbles offline. They want to get that racing line and the passing line cleaned off. So as we get towards the final stages of this race, drivers have an opportunity to go high, to go low, to try to see some of that wheel-to-wheel racing that we saw just before this last yellow flag.
Now here's a couple of things to consider as the CART safety trucks begin now to go back to their station. There is P.J. Jones. His best finish up to this point has been 9th. Well, he has a chance of finishing second or better. He sits in second right now. Then a little further back in the field, consider the situation of Cristiano Damata. There he is. Now, Parker's already said best finish for a Toyota, but what about for Cristiano himself? His best finish previous was 14th. He now sits in 4th. And then further back yet, Alex Barron driving for Dan Gurney, and that All-American Eagle is currently in 9th place. 12th place was the best that he ever finished.
And it should be a heck of a shootout here, Paul. We've got 26 laps when we take the green flag, and all heck should break loose as they come around.
Watching for the green flag, Montoya brings them back. Then the separation now with Gugelman and Gurney back to Jones, the Gurney car of Alex Barron. Here we go. We're running again. Already PJ makes the first of the critical moves. Paul Tracy comes down to the inside. So does Damata. Gugelman helps them both out, helps all 3 of them out. But Montoya able to rocket away, taking the advantage of the restart. Remember how good he was at restarts at Long Beach. He's doing the same thing here.
That was really some heads-up driving by Alex Barron. As soon as the green waves, you can pass. He immediately was by Gugelman, who then pulled over to let everyone else by. But now P.J. Jones has got to figure out how to get around this Eagle chassis if he wants to pursue Juan Montoya for the first win of his career.
P.J., the Southern Californian. Tracy Damata just behind him. Now there is some relationship certainly between Dan Gurney and Parnelli, certainly PJ's dad and PJ himself. So perhaps the word will come out. Alex, why don't you give him a break? Doesn't appear to have come out yet.
Those negotiations are very tenuous in the pit lane, Paul. Sometimes it involves a lot of sign language. Sometimes it's pretty cooperative. But P.J. Jones spending most of his career with Dan Gurney through GTP cars and IMSA, and then in the early days of their Champ Car development program, trying to figure out a way how to get close enough to even set up a pass. But right now, Alex Barron running very strongly. But we see Cristiano Damata all over the back of Paul Tracy. Cristiano Damata's first Indy Lights win came here in 1997. He won again in 1998. Can he get the job done past the guy with the most experience around this racetrack? We'll have to see how the balance changes, Paul, in the closing laps of this race.
They back up behind Alex Barron, who is off the pace, running in 9th, 1 lap behind the lead. Montoya, he's gone 6 seconds ahead of 2nd place. And P.J. Jones, you know, they're close, believe me, because they don't really want to climb up on the back of one another. They say if they get within 5 car lengths, then it's even tougher to handle the car. We take you to the pits once again.
And Cal Wells, of course, is watching his driver, Cristiano Damata. You have to be very, very pleased with his performance and Toyota's.
I'm always pleased with what Cristiano does. He's a hell of a race car driver.
A lot of people speculate on who you might choose. Why did you decide in the end to choose Cristiano?
I'm sorry.
Obviously, you're watching him carefully on the track, but what was the main factor in choosing Cristiano to join your team?
Because he's a hell of a race car driver. I wanted the best I could get. He's it.
All right. I think he's found a good one, Paul.
So you're under the impression that Damata's a great race car driver? Certainly Cal Wells thinks so. There he is, the 25 car. Montoya now almost 6 seconds out in front of P.J. Jones.
And Paul, as we see, Alex Barron is not holding anyone up. These cars have now spaced themselves out. The only thing that they can hope for to regain Juan Montoya is trying to use the lapped traffic as picks and be more aggressive through traffic, take more chances to try to catch up to this young Colombian.
If you get the separation here, you saw Montoya. Here comes Alex, and now we look for 2nd place. And there it is.
So certainly Alex isn't holding anyone up, Paul. It's just a matter of Juan Montoya taking off like a shot out of a cannon, and now just waiting for that lap traffic to maybe play a factor in trying to move up through this field.
The point that needs to be made was that Alex Barron's running his own. He's running just as fast as the leaders. So any question to him to let anybody by would be inappropriate.
And Wally Dallenbach made it very clear to the drivers, if you start pointing a finger to a guy that's a third of a lap ahead, is holding you up, he's not going for it.
Montoya, is he looking at 2 in a row? His first win at Long Beach 2 weeks ago, his first pole here yesterday, and now his first oval win. Remember, this is his first short oval drive in these cars.
when we did the preseason show, we picked the championship favorites, and we knew that Montoya might be strong to win some races, but I don't think anyone in the paddock thought that he would be such a strong championship contender. The complexion of the series has changed in only 4 races into the series. I think we need to go back and redo that show.
Closest interval is between 3rd place Tracy and 4th place D'Amata right now. Fernandez, who sits in 5th, is back about 8 seconds behind D'Amata and Tracy. We're looking for them to come through. There they are. That shows you again the interval back with 13 to go.
You can see the car moving there, Paul, and as I said earlier, if we can see it, it's nervous. We'll have just enough laps before the end, whereas the fuel burns down. The handling characteristics of these cars could change noticeably. The drivers can make adjustments from inside the car, but once they get into the traffic, we'll see who's the bravest, who's got the best car underneath them, and who can push the hardest to try to make a pass.
A day that started with a lot of concern and conversation about the new wings mandated for the short ovals by the kart officials. And now the drivers were all almost to a one expressing their displeasure with those wings, but still they've been able to put on a pretty good show and rise to the challenge. Al Unser Jr. was hoping for a comeback, and that ended against the wall, and we hope we'll see him, and we're sure we will, at the race in Rio in 2 weeks. Laps led by manufacturers. One time we saw all the chassis manufacturers, all of them represented the top 4. Paul Tracy, of course, is looking to end a long losing streak. Here in 97, he won. Can he do it again? And then there's Juan Montoya. And I think you probably run out of superlatives for him. 9 to go. Closing laps getting down to serious time now. Robbie Gordon lets both Tracy and D'Amata by. Fuel is not a factor. Tires shouldn't be a factor. The cars are getting lighter, maybe a little harder to handle. Also maybe a little faster. 151.3 miles an hour last time around for Montoya, so he's actually picked up the pace from where he was at mid-race.
And we saw this at Long Beach, Paul, that one of the things that makes him so outstanding is his mental toughness and discipline at such a young age. And at the closing stages of Long Beach, we saw him simply drive away, mistake-free, very much in control of what he was doing, and now he's doing the same thing on this tight mile bull ring. It's very, very impressive.
Juan Montoya out of Chip Ganassi Racing, his teammate Jimmy Vasser back in 11th place, a lap behind the lead with 6 to go. Now there is a heightened sense of apprehension, though. I mean, we've seen the cars step out just all of a sudden. They've done what they can to get the course back in good shape. We assume that that's been done, but still, they all say it. It's like being on an ice rink.
And it's caught some of the best guys in the world completely by surprise. So at this stage, Paul, do you say, look, I don't think I can make up this distance with 5 laps to go. I'm not seeing traffic that's going to help me out. Do I drive just within myself and try to protect my position, or do I really try to hang it out to even get close enough to make a charge for a position and take the chance of walling the car?
Montoya 6.5 seconds ahead of Jones, and then Tracy and D'Amata just behind Jones. Montoya with 3 to go. Focus of the battle, barring any other situation, is going to be on Jones, Tracy, and D'Amata on the final lap.
Because, Paul, I got to tell you, for the top 4 drivers, although they may not admit it publicly with the exception of Montoya, all 4 of these drivers, Montoya, Jones, Tracy, and D'Amata, would be very, very pleased to finish right where they are.
No tension in that pit, though. They're looking to go back-to-back. Jones, Tracy, D'Amata, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. It's going to be tight. They're all right there. He saw it first 2 weeks ago. He sees it first again. White flag. Less than a mile to go for Montoya. And Montoya works down the backside. Jones, Tracy DeMata are nose to tail.
These guys aren't giving up, Paul.
Montoya slows, comes off the corner, takes the checkered flag, takes the win. Battle for second is going to be it, and it's not much of one. Jones, Tracy DeMata, but those are going to be three very happy men. That's a major accomplishment for all of them. Montoya wins in 2 races in his first 4 starts and equals the performance of Nigel Mansell back in 1993. We'll be back to talk with him in a moment. Certainly for Montoya as the winner, but as we show you the unofficial results for P.J. Jones, that's a personal triumph in his own right. Paul Tracy, well, he persevered, stayed in the fight, and Cristiano DeMata, he is celebrating like you can't believe. But first, the winner, 2 in a row, Gary.
High fives from Chip Ganassi, and Juan Montoya comes out of the race car with his 2nd consecutive victory. Juan, your guys in the pits, tell me about that first pit stop. Was that what won you this race?
Oh, I think they deserve this win, you know. We had a really good car. First time the car wasn't, you know, I was sliding a bit and Elliot got by me. The second time, I think it was Alex Barron. He just chopped on me and and he got by me. But both times, the guys in the pits did beautiful.
How close did you come to having contact with Helio? Because it looked like one time in traffic, it was very close.
No, it was all right, you know. I know Elliot is very aggressive. And I knew he would like to win this race, and he was trying really hard. I was thinking a bit more about the points. You know, top 5 here will be beautiful, but it's a win.
And win it is for the 2nd consecutive time. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Jan?
Well, of course, a great run for P.J. Jones. And P.J., they said you couldn't pass here, but you showed them that wasn't the case.
I could do without that spin through the infield, though. I mean, my heart was like this. I had a pretty good car, you know, a little loose at the end. Nothing I could do with Juan. The only way I was going to get him is in traffic. And I got him once, and I just couldn't hang on to it.
Obviously pretty happy you stayed with the Swift.
Yeah, I mean, the car ran great all day. I think it was better than anything else out there. I just want to say thanks to the team, Vistion, for, you know, giving me a good run. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. This is awesome.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
So there's first and second. We'll show you down through the rest of the field. Remember, these are unofficial until they're posted. We're going to try to get an update on Helio Castroneves for you, and there's still a little bit more to do here at Nazareth. In Nazareth, Juan Montoya takes over the points fight. Fernandez still stays in there, and Andretti moves up to that tie for 3rd from 4th place. That's the way the points stand as they head off to the next race of the season, and that is the CART Rio 200. Will have coverage on ABC. That's 2 weeks from now. When it started, I asked you, will they be able to pass, or were they just conning us? And Parker, you said you expected a good day.
And it was a good day, Paul, except for the accidents, which is always sad to see. It was some really good wheel-to-wheel racing and victories for the top 4 guys. For Montoya, Jones, Tracy DeMata, they all had a great day today.
And the official report on Helio Castroneves, who was so much a part of this battle in the early going, he has some soreness on the right side, both knee and elbow, but they expect to release him from the medical center within the next few minutes, and hopefully they can give him a full, clear bill of health. So now, with 225 laps done at Nazareth, our Toyota Spotlight focuses on this day run under the sun. This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. For more, log on to ESPN.com, part of the Go Network, go.com. I'm Paul Page for Parker Johnstone, Gary Gerald, and Jan Vikas. We'll see you in 2 weeks south of the equator at Rio.